Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Not Funny Guys Presents Go Team Venture. Remember to like and subscribe. I keep telling you that until you listen. But we are now closing out Season 5 and covering our special that leads us into Season 6. So we are on Episode 8, The Devil's Grip. Originally aired July 21st, 2013, written by Doc Hammer. This brings us to fully around to what happened after the ball fell on him and Botsy Spock. All right, so we now have a situation where Rusty is initially believed to be dead. Hatred sends the boys off to live with their godfathers. This means Dean goes to live with Colonel Gentleman, and there he is in charge of documenting his old stories for his memoirs and more. Hank goes to Boca Raton to live with the Action Man in his retirement community, where he arrives to find him burying Ant Man after the Action Man accidentally crushed him with his rocking chair. To fulfill a team venture tradition, he then urinates on the grave, and Hank, being the youngest present, is asked to defecate. Disgusting. Weird. Hank helps him win over his love interest, who turns out to be Billy's mom, Rose. Interestingly enough, Jeannie, the former wife of Major Tom, has passed on. It's not like he's cheating on her. Hank reluctantly then like I said, helps him win over, and then he recognizes her as Billy's mom by the voice. Hatred reluctantly gets asked 21 Gary to help him infiltrate the cocoon in order to find Rusty, who apparently he does believe is still alive. Where the Moppets then find out about their infiltration. Hatred is convinced that 21 sold him out. 21 convinces the other henchmen that the Moppets killed 24, turns on them, sort of coming back to the fold. The Monarch repeatedly attempts to torture Rusty, but all of them fail. He gives up and decides to let him go, but he claims to Dr. and Mrs. the Monarch that he broke Rusty's will, and he grew tired of it. Just as 21 returns formally to the Monarch, Hatred launches a missile at the cocoon in a revenge attempt of his supposed betrayal. The cocoon then crashes into the house and destroys the Monarch's home. Post-credits, we find the Monarch has now moving into his childhood home in Newark, or Newark, as New Jersey people would correct me, with 21 and Dr. and Mrs. the Monarch. Ant-Man's body has been relocated to the compound. Hank and Dean talk about particularly what's been troubling Dean. He reveals that they're clones. Hank is actually delighted, thinking that this is actually really cool, which apparently helps cheer Dean up out of his goth phase a little bit. And then they urinate on the grave, and Hank is realizing that Dean is slightly younger than him, says, "You're going to love this," as he then goes off to perform the ritual. In addition, by the way, going into the insights for this episode, in addition to recording Colonel Gentleman's life events in his memoirs, Dean is also apparently put in charge of recording episodes of Sabrina the Teenage Witch for when it's a real cat, Salem, versus a fake one. Of course, the Ant-Man is dead. The whole pee on the grave thing and pooping for the youngest is just gross. Like I said, Hatred recruits Gary to go on the Rusty rescue party. Rusty is healed up before his torture by Dr. and Mrs. the Monarch, which is very weirdly kind of like makes me think of Princess Bride. And apparently it's also Guild Rules. The albino in Princess Bride did all the patching up before the testing torture. Dr. and Mrs. the Monarch threatens Rusty also that if he does not indulge the Monarch's torture and this whole charade, she will literally do bad things to him. Hank, of course, is helping Action Man win over Rose. Like we said, Jeannie's dead. Think back to the Ghosts of Saragossa. See that one episode? Pulled away, he supposedly puts on the worst little act where he supposedly helps win Hank back from the dangers of rock and roll, which really screams like a whole reefer madness kind of weird 1950s idea of what's dangerous. We do also, one more in Boca Raton, do see Stan Lee apparently is retired there in the background. 21 Hatred realizing at one point during this whole charade that they have a lot in common. Breaking into the cocoon. The Monarch, of course, back in the house with Dr. and Mrs. the Monarch. He is dressed up what looks like Ming the Merciless from Flash Gordon. And Dr. and Mrs. the Monarch's whole get-up, this real weird fancy get-up, looks like something Padme from Star Wars Episode 1 would wear when she's Queen Amidala. Colonel Gentleman recounts his encounter with Brainulo and the Action Man. This is apparently when he first met Rose during this whole little encounter. Monarch is doing, at one point, does a dentist torture and is horrified by Rusty's breath. Apparently, whatever the last thing he ate, he hasn't brushed back since then. Colonel Gentleman apparently misses the beat poets, particularly Allen Ginsberg, who was gay, just like Colonel Gentleman. Hatred caught by, like we said, caught by the Moffats, learned to think that 21 betrayed him. 21 turns them, the henchmen, on them. Hinch killed Bench, Hinch, whatever, the weird little line. He's convinced them that they killed 24. Like I said, the Monarch lets Rusty go, even says to him, we're both washed up. He's back to looking at that picture again of that we don't know. When Dr. and Mrs. the Monarch comes in, he says he didn't let him go. It was psychological torture. He's making up for his compensation. Again, Hatred, then we see Hatred passing Dr. Venture on the road. He goes back to have his revenge and just firing the missiles at the cocoon. It crashes into the house. And of course, 21 goes back to working for the Monarch. And then the whole funeral thing. Ugh. But that's where we leave us, and that ends our tenure in season 5. Now we are going to jump ahead about half a year to take on our next episode. So before we do that, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. And we will now move along to our interregnum before we enter season 6. All right, folks, welcome back to our special in-between season break. We've jumped ahead about a half a year here, and for a double-sized 48-minute episode, as you can see, I've jumped ahead in time and changed my clothes. But we are looking at all this, and Gargantua 2 aired on January 9th, 2015, written by both co-creators of the series, Jackson Public and Doc Hammer. So we find that several councilmen of the Council of 13 are being offed by the Sovereign, particularly now that the OSI is closing in, and he declares his plan to those surviving members who he's chosen to keep around, including Dr. Mrs. the Monarch, that he is going to destroy Gargantua 2, which has now been doing its grand opening. Meanwhile, and so Dr. Mrs. the Monarch and then basically refuse. We find that Dr. Z, Red Mantle, and Dragoon have gone missing. But they then eventually will end up making a deal with hunter-gatherers for full immunity in exchange for the Sovereign's location to stop him. So basically, Sovereign losing his cool has caused what little members of the Council of 13 to actually go to OSI for help. The Revenge Society, who has apparently been squatting inside the Monarch's old family home, are forced to run when he shows up, like he did at the end of the Devil's Grip. And so they've been squatting. They literally run away, and they end up at Meteor Major, a space base previously held by the previous guild leader before the Sovereign, Force Major. And they're also planning an attack on Gargantua 2, particularly a heist. The Monarch discovers that Phantom Limbs plans to attack the station and decides to stop him so he can be a councilman. Basically, he really wants to be on the council, especially now that his wife is. He breaks into the Venture compound to steal their rocket, ends up setting the lawn on fire with his symbol. This eventually spreads to the whole compound. Dr. Mrs. the Monarch goes to kill the Sovereign after learning that the Monarch will die if he reaches Gargantua 2. She uncovers the whole plan, and of course the Sovereign reveals that he is actually not David Bowie, which we've kind of known that now, but a shapeshifter. He sets up his office for self-destruct before leaving, but the guild officers watching Ward save her, and the OSI sniper headshot actually accidentally shoots the Sovereign as he's turned into an eagle escaping. The offices escape. Basically the escape pods drives the Monarch's ship, taking it to Meteor Major. He's redirected. Brock, having snuck on board Gargantua 2 to track the investors, is detained by one of them, by them basically being found out. He apparently, JJ made a deal with them. Traster's frozen body is found in space. Of course, Fat Chance helps get the whole Revenge Society onto the station, and they're basically in the middle of a money heist. Secretly, taking orders from the Sovereign Phantom Limb, deactivates the energy shields, leaving the station to be buffeted by asteroids. Brock recognizes Zero. Henchman Zero also played Zeus previously, any which way but Zeus, now part of the society, and goads him into getting close, and then he ends up killing him. Hank frees him, and Rusty and Dean help reboot the shield. The damaged station prepares to self-destruct because the core is overloading, and Sally convinces Richard and Possible to leave the society so their son can still have a father. Knowing the explosion will kill the escaping passengers, the cancer-stricken JJ, who is dying, pilots the station with Tracer, now mutated into the Hulk, away from them, and they both die. The investors, of course, over on Media Major, attack their brother, who apparently Killinger is their brother, on Media Major, but he kills them just as the Monarch and Dr. and Mrs. the Monarch arrive on the station. Phantom Limb in the post-credits also arrives on Media Major. Killinger reveals that he's orchestrated everything so that they can become a new Council of 13. The Monarch becomes excited about the possibility of a councilman before Killinger ruins it for him and says, "No, not you." So that brings us to the end of the recap. Let's talk about some of the things going in on all of this. So we do open with Killinger and the Revenge Society. There's been a whole training montage about how they've approached themselves. They've now recruited, of course, Zero, Henchman, formerly Henchman 1, now Zero, and Radical Left to join their community, and they're going to commit this heist of Gargantua 2. Of course, it turns out they're using the Monarch's old home. JJ is opening Gargantua 2, and the guests are en route. Dean is basically now back to dressing normally again. I guess he's let go of the goth phase a little bit. Colonel Gentleman apparently reveals while they're en route, everybody, the Action Man, Rose, are all on board. He reveals a deep hatred for robots, considering that one robot will save him at the end. It's funny. Amber Gold and Samson are secretly trying to get there to protect JJ. They know the investors are involved. They know he's just being naive. They have kidnapped and replaced some other people for this mission because JJ, they're not invited. Monarch realizes people living in his house. He plans to fix it up. The Moppets are dead. That's confirmed for us. And the Dr. and Mrs. the Monarch is getting called to the council meeting. The Council of 13 members are being killed off. We see a whole sequence of several of them getting killed. OSI tracking these killings. They've been on to them, and you see a big board with Hunter at one point realizing which members they're losing. They believe the Sovereign is offing them as the house of cards he's built is kind of falling in on them. On board the space station, Hank sits on a robot and does a whole Master Blaster from the Mad Max thing with Dean. That's quite funny. Good reference. Amber Gold makes a reference to feels like she's being a space princess, a She-Ra reference. Old He-Man spinoff there. Brock is planting eyes at the OSI all over the place. Rusty calls Hatred at the compound. Apparently he shut down the power. He does this every time he leaves, and Hatred is left without power. Council of 13, what's left of it meets. The Sovereign then shows up, tries to get the organization to attack Gargantua 2. And this is like in violation of a bunch of guild rules, so there's kind of resistance. Killinger brings the Revenge Society to Media Major. Impossible apparently had once been here before, and because apparently he'd been there as a prisoner as a member of the Boys Brigade, there's a whole discussion about him basically being the first boys in space. But this is where they're going to attack. They should do their attack on Gargantua 2. They have a view. No pizza delivery apparently will come out to the Monarch's place in Newark. He does find food, really fancy food and fancy knives in the place, and then he comes to the deduction that Phantom Limb's been crashing here. He finds plans to the Gargantua 2 thing as well, and 21 Monarch to plan to go after them. But first, apparently, they end up going through TSA because they're apparently flying to the Venture compound to use his rocket. Meanwhile, we find out back on the station that Billy is being forced originally to bunk with Rusty until he gets an upgrade. He also goes to see JJ, that's part of the finding out that JJ is dying. Brock and Amber are hooking up, of course. Brock misses Rusty and the boys. This is obviously noted at one point. Then Hank finds them and wants to join in on their little spy mission. Dr. and Mrs. the Monarch going to the guild, talking about how this is going against the guild rules. Sovereign admits to killing a bunch of the other one. He tries to kill the rest of them when Watch and Ward basically intervene to rescue them, forming the Guild Resistance. Monarch in 21, as I said, going through TSA. Apparently Red Mantle and Dragoon, when they're going through TSA, we see Red Mantle and Dragoon and Dr. Z in disguise. They are on the run. Hank steals Brock's mustache, his fake mustache, and then tries to go gambling using his own Hank bucks. Everyone is set up in the casino, big popular thing. And there is one moment where Brock says that only spies play Baccarat, and we see a whole bunch of spies, one of them obviously being 007. Rusty confronts JJ, and this is where the whole reveal that he's dying. He has no family but Rusty. And then the investors show up. They're here to make collection. Brock runs into the investors, but they can't be seen on the video, so Hunter Gatherers doesn't see them. There's he gets exposed and locked up. Revenge Society sneaks in using maintenance thing. Maintenance has also found somebody too, and they found Tracer's frozen body, now bombarded with gamma rays. Phantom Limb has been found by the Sovereign. He's apparently working with him again. Operation Backdoor. All kinds of inappropriate references here. They are working together. He's going to get him back on the council, but he's just being used. Council survivors face off against the Sovereign and Guild defenses in their headquarters. Of course, they're saved by Watch and Ward. General Tracer is revised. He thinks he has the aliens, but then he realizes maybe these are the bad aliens. He runs off. He's crazy. Monarch and 21 go to the Venture compound, as we said. No power, no defenses. Hatred and Dr. O are in the tunnel looking with the Order of the Triad, trying to find the power switch, turn it back on. 21 finds the rocket. They launched them into space. This is the same one that goes back to the careers in science. Autopilot to the station itself. The Monarch leaves his own little signature in fire, which sets off a chain reaction there. Revenge Society gets onto Gargantua 2. Phantom Limb goes to the bridge. They start robbing the casino. Hank wants to fight, but the old Team Venture basically is sort of hanging back. But then Rose kind of ends up leading the way, and they lead a fight back against the Revenge Society. Guild exit apparently to their base is one of the emergency is from a fake fisherman on a boat on a lake. Dr. Mrs. the Monarch calls the Monarch situation. He can't turn around, and she tells him about the whole Gargantua 2 thing. Phantom Limb is confronted by the investors on the bridge. Richard is confronted by Sally in the casino. Zero and Brock, of course, Hank witnesses the death scene right afterwards and throws up. Asteroids are striking the station. JJ, Dean, and Rusty go about trying to save the situation, save everybody. Council of 13 survivors come to the OSI, as we noted. The Sovereign's gone crazy. Dr. Mrs. the Monarch confronts the Sovereign as a... And it's very much like a weird kind of Kill Bill thing where he's revealing his evil plan, but they're in this little couch area, and he set off a self-destruct. Sovereign aims to kill the investors on the station so he can renege on his deal. The Venture compound is now on fire. They're trying to put it out, but they're failing. And when the fire brigade shows up, that all fails because they have basically the powers back on and the defenses kick in. Dean and Rusty, Tracer turns into a Red Hulk, finally. Not a thing, the gamma rays. Dean and Rusty trying to fix the shield. Killinger ends up fighting the investors, who apparently are his brothers. Basically, it's not their place to interfere this way. Rose, Billy's mom, tells Billy that she is about to tell her that he's a hero when he's confronted about why she has these skills, but then she lies to him and says she's a professional dancer. Reactor is overloading. Revenge Society confront Phantom Limb for turning on them, but Sally basically gets Richard to leave and come back. Very much, she calls them the LARP Society. I absolutely cackled when that happened. Watch and Ward, of course, save Dr. Mrs. the Monarch, and they have an escape pod out the top of the mountain issue, and then they end up with the ones who end up saving 21 and the Monarch. Sorry. Outside the Headshot, when they're outside, Headshot, the boat gets rocked by the explosion. Headshot's rifle goes up, shoots, and he kills an eagle, which is the Sovereign transforming in his shape-shifting. Let's see here. JJ and Tracer basically save everyone. The Dr. Mrs. the Monarch saves the Monarch in 21, takes them to the base. Basically, they come in, they fight, they see the last of the fight between Killager and the investors. Then we have Dean and Rusty are saved by Brock, and the venture compound basically is burned to the ground. And then we finally end, of course, with no more Sovereign, but we're forming a new guild and a new base on Meteor Major, and of course, the Monarch is not allowed. Poor guy. But that brings us not only to the end of season 5, which we covered earlier, but now we've covered our in-between, setting up kind of our third act. So when we come back on Monday, we will be begin to look at season 6, and we are going to jump ahead a year again. And we will be looking at episode 1, Hostile Makeover, and episode 2, Maybe No Go. So thank you for listening and watching and following along with us as we've been going through here. We're going to be hitting the final stretch here, last 2 seasons, but here we go, and then the film. So we're going to be diving into that. So we'll be picking up things on Monday as we get into season 6. So in the meantime, like, subscribe, follow along. Check out the podcast Off the Reels. Links are in the description. We are in the process of moving on from the Coronetto trilogy and moving into a little Saoirse Ronan detour before we move on to whatever else. And we're taking a look at Little Women. And then we'll be doing Hannah, and then that's Casey's selection. Little Women's Eric's selection, and I selected Lady Bird. So we'll be looking at those before we move on to something else. But if you want to write to us, notfunnyguys.offthereels@gmail.com. I don't even know if I'm getting that right half the time. I should write that down. But in the meantime, until then, what color is your clean suit? And go Team Venture.
Say not funny guys again.
Not funny guys again.
No, can you say not funny guys?